I was just 3 weeks out of training, and I already have had enough of this war. The Threens were winning. They were ruthless, sadistic, and totally without mercy or compassion. Whenever they found one of our colonies, they started the occupation by destroying our birthing pools, killing our young while still in the larvae stage, helpless. We fought back as best we could, but our ships were smaller, slower, and poorly armed. We faced a war of extinction, and yet our leaders kept trying. Diplomacy. After every meeting with the enemy, they promised to stop their actions, but they never did. They always just lied to our leaders, and our leaders lapped it up like the groveling dogs they were. I was assigned to the 3rd Response Unit, outfitted with one of our race's newest ships, top of the line, state of the art, but still a joke compared to our enemies. One thing my ship did have going for it was a small faster-than-light engine, unheard of really in such a small vessel. An idea came to me as I lay in my bunk talking with my wingmate. We were discussing how we just fled from a Threen assault, giving up an entire planet to them, condemning every one of us still left on, that rock, to a gruesome death. "You know what?" I said, my arm draped over my eye stalks as if to hide from the fate we just imposed on many of our race. "I think the humans were right." My wingmate coughed in shock. "Why bring those crazies into it?" he asked. "Don't we have enough to contend with already?" Humans. What they did? It opened many an eye stalk, that is for sure. When the humans were first discovered and introduced to the galaxy at large, they were excited. They were always smiling, hopeful, and optimistic for their futures. They were so happy to find out that they finally were advanced enough to be accepted into the galaxy. I remember seeing screen grabs of the Dolan ambassador laughing, literally laughing in the face of the human representatives. "Advanced enough," he roared, with mirth. "Who cares if you are advanced enough? Your planet is rich in resources. That's all the advancement we need." The smile on the humans' faces seemed to crumple at that, though they valiantly tried to remain optimistic of the situation, until the Dolans took untold millions of tons of resources and refused to pay, saying, "Now you know to get payment up front. That knowledge is the only payment you will get from us." And the Sleen Empire, they invited 100,000 humans to come live on their planet, only to slap them in chains when they arrived and made slaves of them. When the humans, enraged at the treatment of their people, demanded the release of those captured, the Sleen Empire said, "Very well, we are sending the 100,000 to you now," and then sent 100,000 Viridium-tipped missiles into human cities and settlements. It was after that when the Jandis Collective offered them medicine to treat the Viridium burns. At first, the medicine was a godsend, curing the burns and disease caused by the missiles, but then every human that had gotten treatment died in horrible agony. The Collective had used the humans as test subjects for a biological weapon, the Rio. Humans, after this, cut off all contact with the galaxy at large. They had become a laughingstock and were the butt of many a joke and insult. They refused any ship, left any hail unanswered, and never left their own area of space. But 2 of their years later, they opened channels to the galaxy and broadcast this message: "We welcomed you with open arms. Some of you laugh at us, and that is fine. But if you betrayed us, this is your only warning. Run." Oh, how they all laughed. These stupid humans, what could they do? The galaxy did not laugh for long. It seems that even though humans were the punchline of many a joke, they were still able to study the weapons and craft of their enemies and improve on the designs. The first sign that the humans might be a force to be reckoned with was when all 7 of the Sleen Empire core worlds were bombarded with tens of thousands of a new type of Viridium missile, ones which seemed to react violently with the atmosphere itself, making the air unbreathable, and saw people immolated where they stood, even 1,000 miles from where the missile hit. Most of the galaxy thought this a fluke that the humans blindly stumbled into creating, a weapon that worked better than they planned. But when the Jandis Collective began to fall sick, world after world of collective members dying in agony from a disease so potent it caused necrosis of the skin to where body parts started to fall off the infected, the galaxy realized this was indeed the humans, exacting revenge. Medical teams from many worlds studied the virus, and it seemed the Jandis Collective's own disease they used on the humans was mutated with a human disease called leprosy, and the result was disastrous. The galaxy at large called on the humans, begged them to stop their warfare, and none so loud as the Dolans. They apologized to the humans, offered to pay back what they owed double. They waited in fear for the human response. And when over a dozen large ships appeared in the skies above the Dolan homeworld seemingly out of nowhere, the Dolans were heard from no more. Their world was laid waste, and the humans sent out one last message, over 600 years ago. Do not come near human space. Do not approach us. Do not contact us. Do not even mention us. If any ship approaches, be it a vessel of peace or war, it will be destroyed. There will be no further warning. The galaxy's races, of course, assembled for war. How dare this upstart race order them what to do? So thousands of ships flew to human space to wage war. Not one of them returned. Not one. Over the centuries, envoys have been sent to human space, all with the same result. The ship's engines would cut out for no reason, then the ship would be destroyed. The humans were right, I repeated. Everyone else in this galaxy sit there and watch us die, slowly at the hands of the Threen. They do nothing. We would all be better off if we were just left alone. We would be better off if we were like the humans. And I stopped. My wingmate scoffed, but an idea had been planted in my head. A wild, crazy idea, but no more crazy than flying off under gun to fight a more powerful opponent. Tomorrow I would fly for human space. Tomorrow I would do what no one dared to do for centuries. Tomorrow I would ask for help from the most dangerous race in the galaxy. It is no small wonder that when I flew off, away from battle, my superiors thought me a coward. They threatened me with death if I did not return with their ship, but I was already light years from their grasp. My ship was, after all, the fastest single-manned vehicle my race possessed. Even as fast as it was, it took weeks for me to near what we all thought was human-controlled space. I was nervous, scared that at any second I would be vaporized by some unseen hand, but still my ship flew on. Days later, as my stores of food were dwindling, my engines cut out for no apparent reason. My hands flew on the controls, but all systems reported they were working properly. Perplexed, I wondered why, if everything was working, I sat dead in space, and then it hit me. Humans quickly, I activated my communicator and broadcast on all frequencies. Greetings! I am Pilot Javine, of the 3rd Response Unit of the Balkan race. Silence was the only reply. I come to beseech your aid. The Threen Empire is decimating our people and our worlds, and the galaxy at large just sits there, waiting. Like vultures to pick at the bones of my people and my culture, silence. Once your race also battled with the apathy and betrayal of the races of this wretched galaxy. You suffered once as we do now, from the disdain and callousness of races that pledge to help, yet do nothing, from races that swear to defend, but instead betray. Javine checked his broadcaster. Everything seemed to be working. He continued. We were discovered as a world a century after you had left the galaxy. We never had the opportunity to know you, but I know of you. The old races speak your names in fear, as the only race to stand up to the evil that permeates the very core of this expanse of space. Silence. I know why you turned your back on the other races. I understand as my race is betrayed just as yours. Was silence, but you can help us bring an end to the way things are. How can you sit on the sidelines doing nothing while peaceful worlds burn? Silence. How can you be so cruel? Silence. Angry, Javine yelled into his communicator. How can you be so cowardly? He sat in fear, waiting for his death, when without warning, his engines came back online. Confused, he looked around, wondering what was happening, when across his communicator a single word scrawled from right to left, run. Slamming. His fist down in anger and frustration, Javine roared into his communicator. Run! Run! My own people think I ran from a fight with the Threen. Now you tell me to run like the other races. You want to know the truth? You are the worst race of them all. I will show you run. And with that, Javine ran to the engine room, ripped his sidearm from his holster, and fired it into the FTL engine that was his only way home, his only escape, his last hope. He fired until his weapon was dry, and the engine was little more than a pile of smoking slag metal. Breathing heavily, he roared back into the communicator. "Cowards! You will not shoot me in the back. Look me in the eye stalks if you are going. To kill me and be done with it." Silence. In a fit of rage, Javin smashed his empty sidearm into the communicator again and again. Now it truly would be silent. 2 days later, Javin's ship still floated dead in space. He sat on the floor, hugging, his legs to his chest and still bristling with anger. He regretted his rash decision and wished he had died fighting the Threen. Javin sat stunned, mouth agape. "Please stand by for your vessel to be taken aboard the UES Kavik for repairs. Thank you," Javin said timidly, unsure if the humans would be able to hear him. "Your thanks are not necessary," came the reply. "In fact, we owe you an apology. We have distrusted the other races for so long, we forgot what it was like to be facing them alone. You reminded us of something we long thought was impossible." "What is that?" Javin asked timidly. "That there can be other races out there. Brave, defiant, good at heart. Races that remind us of us." And with that, the words stopped, and Javin saw from his view Port 6 large angular vessels shimmer and appear from seemingly nowhere, huge and bristling with weapons. "Help was here the humans," answered. "Enjoy another story." The High Counselor was beyond nervous. He had prayed to the 7 stars that this day would never come in his lifetime, but here he was, staring out his view screen at the 13 black ships, bristling with weapons and piloted by the galaxy's nightmare, the Voss. The Voss were notorious, going from system to system, world to world with their ships, threatening war and total annihilation if they were not appeased. Against them, none could stand. Against them, there could be no victory. The only saving grace for the galaxy at large is that as advanced as they were, the Voss seemed to lack any proficiency in negotiations. With their power, with the strength they had at their command, they could have squeezed much more than they did from the races they terrorized. They often accepted a fraction of what they could have demanded and were none the wiser for it. So that is how the High Counselor was in the position he found himself in now. The Voss had approached the Union of Planets territory, and the powers that be sent him and the 13 other representatives of the Union to negotiate with the Voss before they decided to just come in and kill them all. Both of his hearts almost stopped beating in his chest when the view screen flickered and switched to show the Voss commander. He did not seem that imposing, green-skinned and an angular face. He pretty much seemed like every other sapient species. But the eyes. There was something very disconcerting about the Voss commander's eyes. They were narrowed with intensity, searching the faces of all on the High Counselor's ship, as if looking for something. Shaking, the High Counselor began. "Most glorious and powerful Voss commander, we welcome you, and are honored you graced us with your presence in these negotiations." The Voss commander's face did not change, but his eyes did. They were no longer narrowed and intense. "You may call me commander," he said, the translator spitting out his words seconds after they had been spoken. "Gracious commander," the High Counselor said, bowing his head, "I appreciate your patience and restraint." As he said this, he heard another Union representative cough slightly, as if in amusement, but he covered it up quickly. The High Counselor glanced over and glared at the newest member of the Union, a race calling themselves humans. He knew very little of them, as they had just joined less than a few 10th cycles ago. Much too soon to be sent to negotiations as important as this, but Union law stated all Union members must send a representative. "Get on with it," the Voss commander barked. "To prevent your annihilation, what do you offer the Voss?" Smiling wide, the High Counselor once again bowed his head. "Greatest of the Voss commanders, as the head of the Union, we offer you the third arm of our home system, from the star known as Planus to the planet known as True. In all, thousands of mineral-rich asteroids, 35 planetary bodies, and their moons, and a rouge planet by the outer spiral." The Voss commander sat back in his chair. He seemed to sigh and his eyes just showed disappointment. "And the next representative?" he asked, waving a hand at the view screen. So the 13 other representatives went, in order of their joining the Union, each bowing and offering the Vas a section of their domain, giving up planets, untold millions of tons of resources, and even offering ships. And then it was the humans' turn. "Most noble and majestic commander," the human began, staring at the view screen. The Vas commander did not seem to notice the human did not bow to him first, but the High Counselor did and gave a slight hiss of warning. "As the newest member of the Union, we are unable to offer you any of our controlled space or any of our resources." The human continued, as the High Counselor's eyes flew open wide in horror. "But what we can offer you, your greatness," the human paused for a second, "is a big glass of shut the fuck up." Shocked silence greeted the human as every other ambassador looked at him in sheer, abject terror. This stupid human just condemned them all to a horrible death. The Vas commander, who had been idly gazing around his bridge as the other ambassadors spoke to him, immediately snapped to attention as the translator caught up and repeated what the human had just said. His eyes narrowed once again, searching the faces of the ambassadors on the ship. "Who said that?" he said, his voice shaking. "Who just said that?" Before the human could even step forward, every hand from every other ambassador pointed at him. The human looked around and shook his head a little with a sneer. The Vas commander studied the human on the screen before him, his intense gaze studying every inch. "I want to make sure," the Vas commander hissed, his hands gripping his chair's armrests tightly, "your intent with your pledge to us. Our translator was unable to translate some of what you said, but it reported that your statement had a tone of defiance. Is this correct? Did you mean to imply defiance?" He said this last part in a dangerous whisper. The High Counselor, shaking with fear, started to say, "My most gracious commander." But the Vas commander roared, "Shut up, worm," and pointed a finger at the human. "I want him to speak for himself." The human stepped forward. "My apologies, Your Greatness. There appears to be some confusion." The human began. The Vas commander listened intently as the translator repeated what was being said in his own language. His shoulders seemed to slump at its words. "I did not mean to imply defiance. I meant there to be no doubt," the human said, his voice raising in anger. "I meant for you to understand that in no circumstance ever would we simply bow and scrape to you or give you one damn thing." The High Counselor fell to the floor at the human's words. It was all over. They were all doomed. "Perhaps," the human continued, "if I told you to go back to where you came from and fornicate with your own mothers, my intent would be more clear. Does this help you understand? Does this make my position on this matter crystal clear, you pompous windbag?" Silence. The Vas commander listened to the translator, then had it repeat the human's words twice more. When he was done listening, he turned his eyes on the human and got to his feet. Silence. The ambassadors were all cowering, knowing what was about to happen. The Vas commander slammed both of his fists on the console in front of him and roared, "Finally!" The human's eyes widened in surprise. This was certainly not the response he was looking for. "Finally," he repeated, a large smile across his face. "We have been looking for you. We knew you had to be out here somewhere." The human was confused. "Looking for us? You know us. You know nothing about us," he said defiantly. The Vas commander laughed, and his laughter was more terrifying than any of his threats could have been. "Oh, don't I?" he said, still laughing. "Let me tell you how much I know about you. I know that you joined this stupid little union recently," the commander began, sitting back in his chair. "I know that it did not take you long to realize that you are like a predator among prey, that all these other races," here he waved his hand dismissively at the other ambassadors, "combined could not challenge you, and you are aware of that fact." The human stiffened a little, but remained silent. "I know that you realize that there must be more out there, that this cannot be it. This cannot be all that there is. I know that your race challenges each other constantly, that competition and battle are in your blood, that your need to test yourselves against others is paramount, or you will stagnate and die. Here, the commander's eyes narrowed. I know that you need to have battle and conflict, not just against equals, but against those more powerful. I know that that is what makes you strong and enables you to overcome any obstacle and propels you to ever greater heights. And I know this, he said, staring right at the human, because we are the same. There was again a moment of silence before the human replied. He seemed to be picking his words carefully. I thought I knew you as well, but I was mistaken. I think I understand you now. The vast commander smiled. Oh, please, tell me about myself. I know that as a race, you got complacent. I know that you felt like you were suffocating, like you could not breathe as you were tied down to those you knew were not your equals. The vast commander was no longer smiling, but he was listening intently. I know that the galaxy thinks you are bullies and that you are stupid. I know they appease you with trifles and garbage and you let them, not because you are stupid, but because you do not care for such things. I know you push, not to intimidate other races, but to find a race with a backbone, a race that will push back. I know that you have looked the galaxy over and found no one that would stand up to you. You are not a bully, you are bored. You fear boredom over everything else, because if there is no thrill in life, why bother living it? I know you fear to find no one equal to yourselves, and that if you only face those that are weak, you will become weak as well. And I know, the human said, looking right at the vast commander, exactly how you feel. The High Counselor and every other ambassador on the ship sat silent. They did not know what was going to happen anymore. This was uncharted territory. My race has a saying, the human said, that when the two biggest guys in the neighborhood meet, they have to fight. The vast commander simply nodded his head, but he seemed almost saddened. But I found that that is not true in every case. The Yuri, human continued and began pacing in front of the view screen. Sometimes they become the strongest of friends. The vast commander nodded in agreement. I believe this as well, but we are at the edge, he replied. We stand on the edge of a blade. Do we fight? Do we test our mettle against each other? Is it fated that this will be so? The human stopped pacing and looked at the commander. In my gut, you do not feel like an enemy. You feel like a brother. The vast commander nodded almost sadly. Long have we searched for you, to test you and ourselves in battle, and now that I found you, I do not want to continue on that course. I will tell you what, the human said, smiling back at the commander. Why don't you come over, we throw some grub on the grill, throw back a few beers, and discuss what we are going to do. The vast commander listened, then said, the translator, did not understand half of what you just said, human, but... Here he smiled. It sounds good to me. We will prepare for transport to your vessel. The human smiled. Not this one. We have a battle cruiser out of sight behind the nearest moon. We brought it in case there was an issue. The High Counselor looked shocked at this information. The vast commander barked a laugh and pointed at the human. I knew I liked your race for a reason. Oh, and Commander, the human said, almost as an afterthought. Since we both thrive on competition, tell me, what do you think of sports? Enjoy another stroy. As Drac walked down the clean, sterile corridor of the hospital wing he was in, he briefly checked his notes. Claimant requests $4,500 credits plus hospital costs for a case of indigestion. Drac smiled. His job as an insurance investigator was to ferret out false claims, and any claim over 200 credits almost always required verification. 4,500 credits plus hospital costs for a case of indigestion was absurd and easy to deny. He just needed to get an official statement from the applicant before he could deny the claim. Applicant, John Marshall. Human, ugh. Drac had dealt with humans before, and though most of them were pleasant enough, a few could be troublesome. Most of the serious issues his office had dealt with lately were in dealing with humans. Drac reached the end of the corridor and opened the door to the room that held the human known as John. Drac was stunned as he saw the man lying in the hospital bed, bandaged and groaning in pain. His face was puffy and bruised. He appeared to have lost some teeth, and it appeared that both of his arms had been broken. Confused, Drac once again checked his paperwork. Yup. Indigestion. He double-checked the room number, and again, he was correct. John? He began slowly. The human turned to look at Drac through one eye, as the other was purple and swollen shut. Yes, John said. Even his voice sounded like it was in pain. Putting on his business face, Drac strode forward and offered John a hand, but withdrew it when he remembered the human had no working appendages. Hello, I am Drac Nasser from Universal Life and Health. I am here to follow up on your insurance claim due to your bout of indigestion? John blinked his good eye slowly, as if even this movement caused him agony. Yes, he replied. Indigestion. I am afraid I will need a statement, Drac said, as well as how indigestion caused you to claim such an unusually high amount of damages. Drac was impressed that he was able to refrain from saying absurd amount. Oh man, John groaned. It was like this. I was assigned to the garbage frigate Hauler 3 as the chief engineer. Drac nodded his understanding, taking notes as the human spoke. We were 3 days out of dock when the cook, a Talarian named Flook, asked some of the crew if they wanted to try a delicacy from his homeworld. Sure, we thought. Sounds great to us. Drac scribbled his notes as the human continued. He already had written the word denied in large capital letters across the top of his notepad. So we sat down to eat Flook's feast, as he called it. John continued. You know, it tasted pretty good. I was not sure what was in it, but it wasn't bad. It wasn't until later that night when it began to hit us. Please continue, Drac said. He really wasn't even paying attention at this point. So it hit the navigator first, an amphibian from Verloc 2. While she was trying to plot a navigation course, she suddenly erupted in a geyser of vomit. Poor girl was mortified, trying to run off the bridge trailing the gray-green remains of Flook's feast from her mouth when she doubled over from stomach cramps. Here John paused and looked at Drac. Do you know how painful stomach cramps are when you have 4 stomachs? Poor thing was in agony. Anyway, as she was helped off the bridge, it hit the transit authority marshal next. His name is unpronounceable, so I just called him Bob. Anyway, Bob tried to make a dash for the lower decks with the captain yelling after him asking where he thought he was going. Bob turned around as if to try to explain when he too went off like a volcano, drenching a poor custodian with Flook's feast, which sent that poor soul retching all over the place as well. Drac stared at the human before him. What the hell was going on? So the captain turns to me to ask something, but I just shake my head no and head for the door. I felt a burning in my guts. Know what I mean? John asked. Drac nodded in agreement. Even though he certainly did not know what he meant, he just needed to find out what was happening on this ship. I mean, my guts were freaking lava, and I knew that I would be yakking up everything I ate for the last week soon. Somehow, I managed to make it to the head and spent the next 3 hours on my knees doing the old Technicolor yawn. Drac noticed John's eyes looked haunted, as if the memory of this event was painful to him. I was drinking water just so that I would have something to come up, you feel me? John almost sounded like he was pleading. Drac just nodded. So the whole ship went into lockdown. Each and every person who ate Flook's feast was in agony. And that wasn't the end of it, let me tell you. After the vomiting, it started hitting the other end, if you catch my drift. Emergency buckets were placed in all corridors, where if a sick crew member could not make the head, they could just puke or do their business right there. It was awful. Drac could swear he almost saw a tear escape from John's tightly closed eye. I know this is difficult, but to make a decision, I will need you to continue. Drac encouraged. Nodding grimly, John gathered his strength and carried on. After 3 solid days of this hell, he said, the crew was desperate. Every slight shift, Every movement caused crewmates to either void their stomachs or make them run from the room, praying they would make it to a bucket in time before they would ruin another uniform bottom. Drac was paying full attention now. Even if this was all a lie, it was the best story he heard in a while. So the navigator comes up to me, John continued. Her eyes were all bloodshot because she popped some vessels dry heaving. She literally begged me to do something to make the pain stop. What could I do? I wasn't a doctor, and the medic we had was suffering along with the rest of us. Then it hit me. Here John paused a second and looked at Drac through his puffy eye. Now remember, I hadn't slept in 3 days, he explained. I wasn't thinking with all my faculties. Drac nodded, almost dreading what John would say next. Well, so the navigator and most of the rest of us were in a bad way, and she was begging me to make it stop. Begging, mind you. Drac just waited. With a sigh, John continued. Well, it was the slight movement that set everyone off, see? So I got the idea that if movement were no longer detectable, like, say if the artificial gravity was turned off, it would make everything better. See? I mean, how can you get motion sick if there was not motion to speak of? See? See? Drac just stood there aghast. Tell me you didn't— I did, John wailed. I swear I thought it would make things better. I swear. I shut off the gravity. The second I did, people were spinning in the air everywhere. All you could hear was screams and retching, and worse, much, much worse. John was almost crying. Now. The air was filled with floating pools of vomit. Crew members were voiding themselves everywhere. The smell, good God, the smell haunts me to this day. With the last strength I had, I reactivated the gravity, sending people hurtling to the floor to be covered in the vomit and other fluids that were floating around just moments before. Drac was stunned. So was that the cause of your injuries? Drac asked after a very long pause. The fall when gravity was restored? No, came the weak reply. The injuries were from Teth. What is a Teth? Drac asked. Not what, a who. Teth was the head security officer. A Venid, 8 feet tall, all muscle and sinew. Why would the head security officer attack you? Drac asked incredulously. Well, see, Teth just happened to be walking down the main corridor when I shut off the gravity. The main corridor was the most used, see, so there were, well, let's say many, many buckets that had been used in that area. When the gravity stopped, all the buckets and Teth were thrown around like ping pong balls. When the gravity came back on, I was told there was not a square inch of Teth that was not covered in some sort of expelled bodily fluids. John looked up with agony in his good eye. Someone told him I was the one to shut off the gravity, John finished. No other explanation needed to be given. Drac stood over the limp, broken form that was once a man. He already scratched out the word denied from his notes. Universal life, and Heath would cover his hospital bills. But the 4,500 credits, John, Drac asked slowly. Why do you need 4,500 credits? John grimaced, his good eye squeezed tight in shame. The captain, John answered, is charging me for all the cleaning. Costs! Okri. As Drac left the hospital, he filled out the insurance investigation form. Claim, approved reason, indigestion. Thanks for diving into this story with me. Don't miss out on the next one. Hit that subscribe button, give this video a big thumbs up, and drop a comment below with your thoughts. I'd love to hear what you think.